start at the beginning of where this doorway opened for you. So, from what I've heard, it started with magic.
Yeah, so I guess you could say my path started as a magician. Um, I was, I was in high school, and what was going on in my life as I was really just trying to find my thing and like what made me special. Because where I was at was, I was pretty heavily bullied. I didn't have very many friends. I felt very insecure, and all I really wanted was like friendship and connection. And I saw that all the people around me who did have those things all had a thing. They were all either like basketball players or rappers, or they had something that they can do. And so that's what sparked the interest. And so I became passionate about finding my passion. And that's what led to me eventually finding David Blaine, who is the man who inspired the path for me. One day I was just sitting at home and kind of down and out because I thought maybe I didn't have a thing. And right when I was in that place of surrender, um, my mom yelled down the stairs. She's like, David, you got to turn on the TV. There's this new magician on TV named David Blaine. And I was just kind of like, I don't want to see. He's probably just going to try and copy David Copperfield. And she's like, no, you don't understand. He's doing street magic. And I'd never heard of street magic at that point. And so when I turned on the TV and I saw him, I was just completely blown away. And it was an instant, that's what I want to do. And so that's what put me on the path of magic. Really, that this desire to connect with people. So I became really good at it pretty quickly. Um, Synchronicity is really what put me on the path. I ended up finding myself at the right place at the right time. For example, I showed up to school one day after seeing David Blaine, and as I'm about to go to class, suddenly I see there's a magician in my cafeteria doing David Blaine-like things, and he ended up being the one who taught me my first trick. And so there was lots of that happened, synchronistic steps of me becoming a magician,
Mm.
and and then that eventually evolved into other things. I'm not sure how deep into the story you want me to go, so I'm kind of giving you a
Go
summary.
go deep. Go deep.
Okay, cool. um, yeah, so yeah, it was powerful for me because yeah. So first, it started off with learning from that magician I saw in my high school, and I learned a bunch of card tricks, and all I could do was cards, and I would just practice and practice and practice and practice. Maybe showing a few people here and there, but not really performing for strangers yet. Like mainly like my girlfriend or my family members. Um, and then it got to a point where my friends would be like, oh, that's cool, but could you do anything other than cards? And I was just kind of like, no. And so again, my search continued. I'm like, went to the libraries, went to the bookstores, and still couldn't find anything very David Blaine-esque. And and again, I just had this point of like surrender, and I was just like, all right, I let go. And as soon as I let go again, one day I was walking into the mall, and as I was walking into the mall, I saw an old friend of mine who I hadn't seen in like 2 years. This girl named Christina, and she was with her new boyfriend who I never met. And she's like, "Oh wow!" She's like, "Lion, I haven't seen you in a long time. This is my new boyfriend, Sasha. He's a magician."
Nice.
Right. So magic really found me. He was the guy who ended up teaching me the performance you may have seen where I borrow someone's $5 bill and I turn it into 100,
Yep.
and which ended up taking me a long way. And so yeah, from there, that's how I became the magician. And I eventually, after 5 years of practicing, just in my room or with my girlfriend or whatever, after 5 years of doing that, eventually I got the courage to perform for strangers and the people who I wanted to make friends with in college. And then that's what kickstarted my life into where I am today.
Excellent. 5 years. That's quite a time of listening to that inner critic a little bit too much, by the sounds of things.
Yeah, yeah. I was just, I was terrified to perform for people because, I had, like I said, I had been so heavily bullied,
Mm.
mainly psychologically, not so much physically, like, but just, made fun of and told I was not good enough. And so I was so terrified of performing for strangers because it's like I felt like I couldn't take any more rejection.
Yeah.
so for those 5 years, it was just perfecting and perfecting and perfecting and perfecting until it got to the point where I'm just like, I was tired of living in this hamster wheel. I was tired of like going one day, one day, one day, and so the icebreaker for me was when I was going to this college. The video you're talking about took place in Dawson College in Montreal. That's where I was going to school,
Yeah.
and as I was, there was this pattern that I would repeat where every day after class, I would come down, I would look in the cafeteria, and I would see all the cool people, the hot chicks, the basketball players, and I would think to myself, I'm like, man, if only they gave me a chance. And I'm like, I know they would love me, and I'm like, I'll perform for them tomorrow. And and tomorrow just kept repeating. It was just constant, just like, okay, tomorrow I need to practice more. Okay, tomorrow I need to practice more, until a whole semester went by and I realized that nothing was changing, and that nothing was going to change unless I changed. And it just got to this point where the pain of living that life was so much more painful than just going for it. I'm like, you know what? I just can't do this anymore. I have to see if I'm going to get rejected and fail, or if I'm going to kill this. And that's what kicked it off. Was just one day, same thing again. I went down to the cafeteria. My knees were still shaking. I was still terrified. It's not like I got some spontaneous confidence boost. I was just as terrified, but I ended up walking up to these two girls and asking them, I thought they would be the least intimidating people to perform for out of all the people that I saw in the cafeteria. And I walked up to them and I was just like, do you have a $5 bill I could borrow? I want to show you something interesting. And for whatever reason, they gave it to me. I guess I didn't seem very intimidating. and they gave me the bill. And what I didn't realize in that moment was that as soon as I took their bill and rolled up my sleeves and started showing my hands empty in a certain manner, that people would realize that I was performing something. And so all of a sudden, my performance for two people turned into about like 50, 60 people circled around me. and I was just like, I remember very vividly in my head being like, this is it. This is make it or break it. And so I like just took whatever courage I had and I folded up the bill. And when I unfolded it, it turned to 100, and the whole school just went lit. And that was it. That was the day that I saw the power I have and the potential I have. And it was, the day that I went from being the most invisible guy in school to the most popular guy in school. Which began a whole other journey of me going deep into my ego. but that's how it all started.